My guest is a comedian, actor, and writer from Los Angeles. He's been featured on Comedy Central and written for I Love You America and the New Negroes. I'm excited to welcome Opey.
Yo, what's up, man?
Thanks for coming on, man.
It's been a minute since when we've seen each other since November. Was it November? I
Yeah,
was in
you
Seattle.
you were up, what, co-headlining Laughs.
Yeah, with
Uh,
Andrew Lopez.
yeah, I like that dude. He's a ball of energy, man.
Dude, Andrew's the best. He's my old roommate, and yeah, it's such a we're so different. I feel like Andrew is cocaine and I'm marijuana. It's like Andrew's so just a good energy, such a good like soul, and will always find a way to compliment you.
hmm
That's the guy right there.
Dude, it
It was a
threw
real
me
fun time.
it threw me off because like I'm a really just shy person around new people.
Hmm.
I'm like kind of guarded. I moved around a lot, so like I just assume anybody that's like coming up to me to introduce themselves is trying to fuck with me. And so like he
Yeah.
like went out of his way, shook my hand. I'm like, what's going on with this guy? Like, and he just was a very positive person.
Oh yeah, he's extremely positive, and that's the kind of stuff that like you need when you're trying to do this. Like a lot of comics are negative, including myself, and like Andrew, like, nah, man, fuck that. You gotta, look at the bright side, and we would just have these conversations of positivity. I would say like when I lived with him when he was my roommate before I moved to New York. Just like late night sessions of just drinking and like talking about the positive stuff. Like some people who drink and get depressed. Andrew drinks and like gets like excited and like, we gotta do this and this and this. And then he does it. Like he's killing it right now, man. Like, he doesn't get a lot of respect out here stand up wise, but he should. Because he's such a, I mean, you saw it, he's
Yeah,
such a murderer.
yeah.
Like every single set, like I would just be sweating buckets and like, oh, I gotta follow this energy now and get the crowd back into it. But you know, such a fucking great guy.
Dude, it's
That curse,
impossible not to
I didn't even
like
ask.
him. It's impossible not to like him too. Like you see him in front of a crowd, it's like who's gonna disagree with any of this? It's like
Yeah.
it's so fucking great. But anyway, so we worked together in Seattle, I guess October or whatever at Laughs, and
Was it October?
October or
I keep thinking it was
November,
November for some reason.
one of
Probably
the
was
two,
October.
and like we know some mutual people. You started in Southern California, but like you're Nigerian. When did you
Yeah.
move to the U.S.?
When I was 5,
Okay,
I moved to we came to America when I was 5 and a half, I think. In 1996, I want to say. Um, and yeah, we moved initially. Actually, we moved to Davis, California. We lived in Sacramento essentially
it's a weird
for like the
area,
first, which was I mean, it's like peak suburbia.
dude. I almost went
And
to that law school.
with
It's
Davis Law School,
yeah,
UC Davis.
I got a scholarship there, but I was like, there's just fucking cornfields out here. It was weird. It's a weird part of California.
Yeah, but it was like such a different vibe than Africa that it was kind of like it was just kind of like peaceful and quiet and serene. And then we moved to the DMV, which is like DC, Maryland, Virginia. It's such a different vibe and such a different energy. Which for me as a kid, it was just kind of like moving to all those different places. Like it was just like I think it was good because it just showed me so many different things. You know what I mean? Like that just made me go like, oh, like the world is so big and vast.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, it was a cool. Like Davis was interesting. We only lived there for like 9 months, but it was such a this is America, small town Americana, and like I bounce forth between like big city, small town, big city, small town. So I'm like very comfortable in both scenarios.
Do you have siblings, or like who was all in your family making those moves?
I have three sisters, and I grew up with both of my parents. My dad died when I was 22. But yeah, we were all moving together. And when we moved to, where were we? Burtonsville? Tacoma. When we first moved to Maryland, we lived in a 3-bedroom apartment with 15 people. So I also lived with a bunch of my cousins and uncles and aunts. So it was like all of us packed in this apartment. It was like crazy.
Jesus.
It was wild. It was real wild. Like we would just like we were like we were like, I mean, we were poor, I guess, but like I didn't really realize it. Does that make sense?
It's a lot of people in an apartment, so it's like,
yeah.
I mean, you didn't really have the context, right?
Yeah.
Like, how different was life here than like your life in Nigeria?
Nigeria, we didn't. I mean, we lived in an apartment, but it was like, it was like big. We lived in Lagos, which is like a city, like a pretty big city. But my dad had like a pretty good job. Like we had a driver to drive me to school.
Shit.
And like we had two drivers, one that would drive me to school, one that would pick me up. One was named Dow, and he would like give us like food and money, and like he was dope, man. And like like my dad, I mean, but in Nigeria this isn't a big deal. My dad had like a Benz, you know what I mean? He had like a good car. And the only reason we left was my mom knew that like as far as her kids would go, the opportunities were going to be sparse. So she started like looking into like ways to get us to any kind of country out of there. And, you know, she looked into the visa lottery, and my dad didn't want to go, but my mom was just like, no, let's go. And she applied for him without him knowing. She like filled out the form without him knowing, and then he won.
Oh shit.
And so she lost, but he won. And she was like, you gotta go. We gotta go. So he didn't want to, but he loved my mom so much that and us too, that he dipped out, and we went to Davis. We lived with my auntie for like a couple months. And then we moved to, I want to say it was Burton. We lived in Castle Boulevard. I don't know where that is now. I think it's Burton. We lived there for like a year and a half. And that situation was also like 7 people in the house. They were in like a 2-bedroom apartment. So then we moved to Silver Spring. Is it Tacoma or Silver Spring? I don't remember. I want to say it was Silver Spring. Silver Spring, we lived in Peppertree, and that's when my mom's sister and brother both won the lottery, and then they both moved in with us with their families.
Okay.
So then it was like 15 of us in that joint. And then like I slept in the closet for a little bit, like it was weird. But I didn't think it was crazy. It just was just like, like I think that's why I really like my alone time. Just because of all the people, like those 15, like everyone was just on you. And my chore of choice was I had to clean the bathroom. So I would be the one cleaning the bathroom.
That's a lot of bathroom to clean if it's 15 people too.
Yeah, dog. That was my main chore, cleaning the bathroom. And but it was like very homely too. There was always someone home.
Yeah.
And like all my cousins was there, and we would just crack on each other. And
were you always a funny kid?
No, I would say no. Okay. My cousins used to call me the joke ruiner. I would like try to take the joke too far. Like every joke has like 3 beats. Every classic joke.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 3 tags and shit. I would keep running a joke over and over again, and I would keep the thread going, and everyone would be like, "Dog, it's over." Like, don't. And I just would keep it going. They're like, I had no sense of delivery or anything like that. Cause like I would, like I remember one time I walked up to a pair of older cousins talking, and then I was like, showed them this book, and I was just like, "You see this book? It's about sex." And they were just, I know that's not, you don't want to not listen to the podcast, but I just like said sex and I leaned in
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
like looked around like it was something naughty to say. And they were like, okay. And it just was so embarrassing. And like, I don't know, but I felt like I've always loved jokes, and but too much where like I would go to jokes.com when I got the internet, and I would like I would like find jokes. And then in elementary school we had journal time, and I would like write those jokes in my journal and just like show them to my teacher and be like, these are jokes that I like. And she would just be like, oh, okay. She'd be like, okay, yeah, yes.
Well,
Like,
there's
it's really
such a
good.
weird thing too. Like as somebody, I I love joke writing. It's probably my
Yeah.
favorite part of stand up. And like if you're into it, it's like it's hard to articulate because they're like each joke is kind of like a puzzle and like
Yeah.
trying to make the pieces work together. And you need that balance, like logic and creativity. But like it's you get obsessive with it because when the joke stops working or like when it doesn't work or like all that dude, it's maddening. And like I think somebody was saying my buddy Taylor Clark, he's a skateboarder, and he
Yeah.
was equating skateboarding to like jokes, like where it's like if you've never seen that trick done, it's so hard because you don't even know if it can be done, but then once it's done it's
Mm-hmm.
so much easier. But like you're
Mm-hmm.
playing in this area of like unknown, and you feel crazy at times with it because you're like, I know there's something there, but you just can't get it to work. But like that, I had that same type of obsessiveness when I came across jokes originally. I'm like, I just want to know how the fuck these things work, you know?
Definitely. I think every comic is slightly autistic,
Yeah.
like specifically the joke writers, because I think we're looking for the patterns,
Hmm.
and but these things are kind of like these ethereal. You don't really know. They're not really. They're these concepts that you're trying to make work. But then certain jokes, you're just like you see the structure right away. You know how it works, and then you see familiar structures. And then the trick is, do you go use those familiar structures and not grow? Like there's so many times where I have this joke about Oompa Loompas being black people,
Hmm.
and I think it's a good joke, but now I see that pattern anywhere where I can like easily do that for something else. Where like these are this,
Yeah.
and it's just like, and they would work. I know they would work, but then I have to be disciplined enough not to take that easy route again and be like, I'm going to go down and just write the same joke again, just replace the functions.
For
You know what I
sure.
mean?
I do think it's at least with like joke right or in stand up in general, like you as you're going through stuff, like you're learning these like moves, and then whatever
Yeah,
the next thing that you're working on, like you have now added those tools to like your tool belt that you didn't
yeah,
have before. So like the newer shit that everything should be like evolving to where like the newest joke you have reflects all the shit you've done to that point to where like you have all those skills involved, and it whether it's
I
like
definitely agree with that.
performance or writing or like whatever, because it's I don't know. That's why like whenever you look back at your shit, like it's like fuck, like it. And some of the stuff still holds up, but it's a weird evolution. But when did you start doing stand up?
I started stand up. I want to say officially 2013. I had done a couple sets in the DMV DC area, but like I just had done them. Not like I would like do one and then not do it again for a year. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like so, but I feel like my real start was in 2013 when I moved to Orange County. Um, but I feel like I guess it's interesting because I've been writing jokes. Like I would go. I worked at this call center, And like there'd be days where I would just like try to like I had a pad and I would be writing jokes and thoughts down. I think I want to go back to that honestly, because not the call center, but the writing on the pad. Because like there's something about writing the thought down as opposed to typing it in that kind of makes it more. I don't know. I don't know if it's a neurological thing, but I feel like I was really becoming a better joke writer or figuring out how to write jokes then. I remember the first time I ever did a set ever. I think it was 2011. I was in Baltimore, and me and this comic who's still doing it. I don't know if he would ever know who I am anymore, but Dave Butler, super fucking funny. Just like his first set and my first set were like night and day. We both started on the same night, I guess. But like his set was like magic. Like he was just up there being a person.
Yeah.
And I came up with these really bad, writery. You could tell I'm writing jokes.
Yeah.
And he was just telling me, he was like, yo, you're definitely a writer. I could see it. Like, you're a writer. We exchanged numbers and we talked a few times on the phone and just kept chopping it up until I think I changed my number because I left DC. But he like it was just like I'm trying to get to what he's doing because he was just went up there and was a funny person.
Yeah.
And but not to say he didn't have jokes, he did. Yeah, he had this one joke that I still remember where he was talking about being in the club and the DJ like is basically the cops, and he was just like, you know, if you got this, if you got money, put your hands in the air. If you got girls, put your hand in the air. If you know anything about the murder on Second Street, blah, blah, blah. And it was like you know, that's great, you know, rule of three joke writing right there with a great premise. So like, just he recognized that I was definitely more of the writer type, and that has always been in my mind of like I gotta like get to more of the, you know, just I'm up there talking. I'm not just saying jokes.
I mean, I watch your like your Comedy Central stuff on YouTube, and anybody listening or watching should check that out and check out all your social media stuff, obviously. But it was it didn't seem rote. I mean, I didn't usually I have a pretty good sense of that, and it seemed I mean, the Oompa Loompa thing, even if it was rote, like it came off pretty loose. So I think naturally we're all like you know, you look at your shit so intensely.
Yeah.
It's tricky. I forgot to say though, anybody who is watching us on YouTube right now, please make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notifications bell. Doing any of that helps us with the algorithm so new people find the show. And if you can, throw a comment in. If you have a question for Opie, throw it in there and I'll work with him afterwards to get it answered. But so you started kind of in DC, but you were part of like the Orange County scene.
Yeah.
And they were
I
like
Orange County is my real start. Like when I really was doing comedy. Like just because you know you do it once a year. I feel like that's like saying like I'm a bodybuilder, but you go to the gym once a year. It's like not really a bodybuilder. But in Orange County, we moved there because my dad died, and no disrespect to Orange County, but it's just not as cool as the DMV. It's just not as there's not as much distractions to fuck around with, at least for me. You know, I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna go to the beach and learn how to surf. I was just like, nah, I'm bored out of my fucking mind. I'm in the suburbs again. How do I find something cool to do? And there's a pretty good scene that was bubbling up in Orange County.
Yeah, there's some big names that have come out from that scene since, right? Like,
yeah, I would say so. There's a really good crop of comics that came out of there. You know, Conor McSpadden, Robin Tran, who's fucking the murderer, Damien Holmes, Ramsey Badawi, Keith Carey. Who else is down there? I know Daniel Tosh did some time down there too. What's the old boy's name that was on SNL? He did some time down there. Daniel Eachus is another guy who's like a fucking killer. I think Jackie Fabulous is sometimes out there. Uh,
And
yeah, Orange
was
County,
the
you got some rippers.
what was your start like? Like, were you at clubs or like what? Where were you working?
Mostly working at open mics and like there was a good open mic scene for if you were starting. This guy named Evan Cassidy uh, really was like a hustler, would produce a bunch of mics. There was two big ones. There was one called Anchor Bar. There was one called Max Blooms. They're both no longer there. But Anchor Bar was like a comedy club. It
Hmm.
really, as somebody who's performed at the Cellar, it feels like the Cellar
Yeah.
because like it's a low ceiling room. Your back is to like a weird wall, and small intimate crowd. So like if you got big or relaxed, it felt like just like a comedy club, and real audiences would come to watch.
Damn.
So and there would be spots like there was a spot called Tickles that would be on Wednesdays, and it was run by this recovering crack addict named Johnny Flowers, and nicest motherfucker of all
Yeah.
time. But it was also in a methadone rehab center, so you
Jesus.
were performing to like recovering meth addicts,
It's
and
actually a great idea for like a new
fantastic idea.
like to just get audiences. Like that's those people
It was
always
a
want to be
fantastic
entertained.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes Johnny Flowers, because you never know where his mind would go. He would just walk out of the room, and you'd be up there for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So you were getting a lot of stage time really fast. Like I developed about 10 minutes of doable material, not the greatest material, but I could do 10 minutes in like 5 months
Damn.
into stand up. I like knew how to do five strong for the time material. Um, and like I could do 10 total, but for like, for 5 months,
Yeah.
man, that was like,
That's pretty
it's
fucking
impressive to
good.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's only if you took it seriously, because like every comic there was good. Like Robin and Connor and Damien, like, they were really good comics. So, but they would get up every single night, like, and I just took, their lead, and I just started getting up as much as they did.
Yeah.
Um,
So when did you end up making the move to New York? Or what drove that?
so New York, so I stayed in Orange County from 2013 to 2016, and then I moved to LA because that it came to that point when like, I was getting festivals out of Orange County. I was getting, um, managements were looking at me and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what? I kind of done everything I could here.
Yeah.
So I moved to LA because a bunch of like, but it was kind of at that time where like we were all 3 years into stand up. It's time to figure out what are we going to take this seriously?
Yeah.
And so, some people moved to New York, some people moved to LA, and I was like, well, my mom lives in Orange County, and I don't want to like often leave her, so I'm gonna stay in LA. So I moved to LA 2016, started hitting the open mic scene there, trying to get on shows out there, and slowly but surely I started getting recognized. I got a manager. And that's when in 2018 I worked for the New Negroes out here.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote for New Negroes. Shout out to the big homie Baron Vaughn. Sized the fuck out of me. That was my first writing job. And that's where I met some people, Funny or Die. They liked what I did on that show. And I Love You America with Sarah Silverman was looking for a new staff writer. And Funny or Die recommended me. I met Sarah, met with head writer Dave Ferguson. They liked me. They brought me on. And I wrote for them for one season until they got canceled. And that was such a great experience because Sarah's the best and Dave's the best and everyone in that room is the best, except for one person, but I ain't gonna say her name. But everyone, I really learned a lot from all those people. Tim Kalpakis, John Haskell, Raj Aside, Nick Weiger, Uh, Beth Stelling was in that room. She's a ripper, you know. If
So
anyone knows who Beth Stelling is, she's
I
one of the dopest comics on the planet right now.
I haven't had anybody come on that like has been in writing rooms and done comedy writing. What can you just break down a little bit, like in layman terms or whatever, like as you're coming in as a new comedy writer, what are you doing? Like, are you sort of a fly on the wall? Are you in charge of I just have no concept of what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically it's joke writing and sketch writing for sketch variety, right? Like the shows, those two shows were sketch variety. They weren't really narrative based. So it's a kind of a different muscle. So in sketch writing and joke writing, we're basically writing monologue jokes, but you're trying to write it in the voice of the comic you're working for.
Yeah.
Like in the case of New Negroes, um, I was writing for Baron Vaughn and Open Mike Eagle, two guys I had known for years at that point, and Kevin Avery, another great writer, another dude who like had the world of patience with me because it was my first job and I thought I knew everything. I was like, oh, I'm funny. But it's like, you got to be mindful of these jokes aren't your jokes. And again, it's that thing you were saying of like, you might see what makes it funny, but that's you. And so you got to like take your ego out of it and look for what the person who you're working for wants.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing about New Negroes was Baron Vaughn was a huge influence for me as a comedian. So it was really easy to write for him. And Kevin Avery is a jokes assassin. And he was really patient with me and giving me the freedom to kind of be experimental and be kind of a snot-nosed kid and just, be like, but it's funnier this way. And he would just have that patience with me. Like, he really taught me how to be in a writer's room and like really was really patient and methodical with me.
So what is the like schedule like for that? Because I just hear like the blanket term like in the writer's room and like, are you? What are the hours? I've heard it can be like crazy hours, and I mean, what are sort of the expectations?
Well, expectations are usually we get an assignment. They'll be like, we're looking for sketches or a monologue. So like in New Negroes, we were writing monologues and interstitials in between each comic. So we would like write monologues based off the topics Baron and Open Mic wanted to cover. And then we would have to make those jokes funny, but also have a poignant part at the very end of the script. And it was pretty challenging, like figuring out how to like talk about like trauma and unpack like concepts like being woke and all that stuff, which aren't funny at their face value, but then making sure that they're funny, finding a way for Baron to do it and also for Mike to do it. And Mike, although he's not a comic, does have like really good, strong comedic instincts.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to like, find ways to balance both of the two. And it's a group effort. Also, there was a really great writer like the other writer in the room. I should know her name. Oh, she's gonna kill me for blanking on her name. You know who you are if you're watching this. She's gonna fucking kill me when she sees this. I'm gonna remember it as soon as this podcast is over. But she also was like very mindful of like making sure we were talking the right things, and she was a writer's assistant who like was getting a lot of good stuff in as well. So it's a very group project thing, which for stand-ups can kind of feel a little weird and a little ego bruising, because I know that's how I felt at certain times, and I was frustrated because, as a stand-up, you're like, just say the joke. If it works, it doesn't work, and then you can move on.
Yeah.
But
it's like
when you're
batting
writing for TV,
practice.
Yeah, when you're writing for TV, it's the stakes are a little higher, and it's like, we're only going to be able to shoot this once or twice, so we got to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more thought into the joke. And then with Sarah's show, we were trying to write for sketches and segments. So segments that would be producing comedy. The one segment that I got on that I was the most proud of is this segment about a game of force to decide which religion is right, and which I think so. It would be Sarah who represented atheists. She'd be playing a game of force against a bunch of other religious figures, and it came out really good in my opinion. Like I know it was like my idea and stuff, but it came out really good. Sarah was obviously amazing in it. All the religious leaders were bad at basketball, so it was great. And like for such a kind of prickly subject, I felt like we kind of captured what the show was about, which is, you know, finding ways for people from different backgrounds to come together and have just a cool moment. It kind of like was a good vehicle to, you know, figure out how to talk about kind of a touchy subjects. And that's the kind of stuff Sarah was looking for. And like I would pitch jokes in her monologues all the time, and she would take a lot of them, but then certain jokes she'd be like, that's funny, but I wouldn't say that. And she would be like, put that in your stand-up. And that was what was great about working with Sarah, because Sarah understood where I was coming from, but she'd be like, that wouldn't work for me, but I think you could pull that off.
Yeah.
She's got a great ear for that shit. And, you know, she was so fucking supportive and just like, honestly, the best boss I've ever had. Like,
was that in LA cool. too?
That was in LA.
Okay.
That was in LA. So I'm still getting to how I got to New York. In 2019, I had written on this other show that was scripted, and that show was completely like, that's a totally different game when you're writing for scripted. Scripted is more like story. How do we break the story and then make the dialogue in the story funny?
Yeah, punching up.
And that punching up and stuff like that. And that, depending on the show, is very different. Like the show that I was writing for in early 2019 was all about it was a multicam. And multicam is joke.
Yeah.
Like you're not really going for high level joke writing. You're just going for jokes. Like I think you're trying to get like 10 jokes a page, maybe even more than that. And it's all about like it's like basically writing a play.
Yeah.
And you know, like I have no problem with multicam. I'd write for a multicam again if it like suited me. But I like more like single cam stuff because there you're more focused on the story and the joke's not of importance, or you can build to a really great joke that lands in the bottom of the second act or top of the third act, or even at the end of the episode. And you can do that too in single cam, but just there feels a little bit more like space to be experimental in single cam, which is probably why a lot of people are trying to do that. And multicam is just multicam is harder, I would say, for sure.
What can you explain the difference? I've heard the explanation before, but I'm blanking on it right now. I'm sure somebody listening to doesn't know, so I'm gonna blame it on them.
A multicam is, think of shows like Big Bang Theory, How I Met Your Mother. They're like multiple cameras in like a set, no exterior shots. It's all like interior shots of like bedrooms, house, like living room,
traditional
bar.
Sitcom.
Yeah, like Friends,
yeah.
Seinfeld. Those are multicams. Single cams are more like trying to think of a good single cam. Like this isn't a comedy. Well, I mean, sometimes it's really funny. Like Sopranos. It's like that shooting style. Like it's one single camera shot on the person. Maybe you'll get dual coverage depending on who you are, or depending on the kind of show you're shooting. But it's usually one camera. Breaking Bad's another great example of a single cam. And multicam, the jokes and the dialogue is more snappy, more punchy. That's why like a lot of stand-ups are expected to be really good at single cam, because you're basically delivering a line, like you do a punchline. And there's a lot of great stand-ups who transition into single cam. Roseanne, Seinfeld. But if you can, single cam is hard. I mean, multicam is hard.
Yeah.
It's super hard to be funny on multicam.
Because it's formulaic, right? Like it's kind of structured, and it's a traditional style of humor that like people at 6 o'clock at night when they're at home, like they're
Yeah.
not going to be offended. And it's like, it's just that like kind of that frequency of laughter versus like the building, like the
Yeah.
crescendo effects that you're talking about.
And it's hard. Like everyone shits on Big Bang Theory, and you have your problems with it, whatever. But it's really hard to write a good multicam show. Like the last one I saw that was really good, that like blew me away with the writing and also the storytelling, was the Carmichael Show with Gerard. I thought that was like such a good single multicam show. Like the stories were very layered, and the characters were very layered. Each character had a strong POV and very nuanced, and they told compelling stories that were issues based, which is very hard to do. And that's why a lot of people want to do single cam. Single cam is easier, but you get to tell a little bit more complex stories.
Yeah.
And there's not always a pressure to be funny, be funny, be funny, be funny, be funny.
Can I ask something just like personal?
Yeah.
Like in your day to day, what, cause like I love watching TV. Like I do stand up every night and I work during the day and shit, but like coming home and like just sitting like 2 hours in front of the TV and just like I'm watching The Righteous Gemstones right now, the Danny McBride series.
Yeah.
And like what are you doing on a daily basis? Like are you a big reader? Are you like a movie person, or like do you bounce around, or what is your like daily practices in terms of what you do?
Oh man, I would say right now I don't really have a daily practice. Maybe at night I'll watch. I'm a big fan of anime,
Mm-hmm.
so I watch a lot of anime, which is another like if you want to learn like how to tell complex, high concept stories, anime could really break that down for you. But and like there's still some simple structures that certain anime has, but anime will really show you how to like tell a really compelling story with really compelling characters. And once you start to like watch a few, you sort of see the structures that are always there. Like day to day, I mean, right now I'm developing my own show, so it's a lot of like meetings and stuff. But let's say I wasn't, and I just had a free day with no other responsibilities, I probably would wake up and try to write some stand up. Then, after a little bit of a break, just start to work on some narrative stuff as far as like building up, making a character. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I have a theory that every big movie you see, the director just casts somebody who's a hotter version of themselves.
Yeah.
So, and it's true, because what you do when you're trying to build stories, you mine yourself through your emotions and your flaws. At least I feel like the best people do this, not to put myself in that category, but like all the great stories, I'd say I look at it like, oh, what this person did was they took the one time they were brave and then they magnified it, made it larger than life, and then added all these metaphorical scenarios and that correlate with the theme, and then they put it in a story.
Yeah.
And every great story, I think, is like a reflection and metaphor of not only the person who writes it or is the director of it, but also of society. And that's why it's compelling, because it reminds you of these things that you went through yourself.
But the kernel of it is
Yeah.
originality. Like it's this unique person's experience that happens to be like, if told the right way, universal to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's funny you said like put it into the story. Like I've talked to a lot of people about like writing, and like there's all these books on like story formats and approaches and shit. And I think technique is like super important, and it's like good to learn and good to know. But if you're trying to like build from technique rather than that personal like point of view, it is missed. Like it just doesn't work.
I'd agree. I think you can get pretty far with technique if you're just really technically sound, but I think the best people definitely, and this is as somebody who's still learning how to write a story. Like I know how to write jokes, and that's debatable depending on who you ask. But story is so hard to figure out because
you got to build these characters. You got to make sure the themes work. A good story, you know, and you got to like have the surprises unless it's like so straight through and so figured out. Like I wrote on this show called Close Enough. That's on HBO Max, and I learned a lot like about like you know some things are just playing a little too straight and like it's like you got to surprise the audience.
Oh yeah.
And it's like joke telling, but with story, it's you don't have to get a laugh out of the surprises, which is makes it a little bit harder because tonally speaking, you know, if a story is always surprising you through laughs, it's not that good, probably. You got to kind of get it at a point where it's doing all these things and all at once. And
it's just payoffs. Like some kind of emotional or like planting a seed and then having that come back up, but have it come up in a way different than what you expect. And I agree with you completely. Like if it's, I don't enjoy watching comedy very much on my own. Like, I don't know about you, but like dramatic storytelling structure, like really good drama is way more pleasing for me. Like, and I fucking, dude, how much comedy can one person like consume, you know? Like when you were in New York, was it like kind of overwhelming at times with that or?
I would say when I was in New York, I was writing on a sketch variety show. So the thing that was really, because I'd be like writing jokes all day and then I'd be going to hit the clubs or do spots all over the city at night. So the thing I would say that really, I would say like being around comedy in that point in my life was very helpful because it was a really good creative outlet. Because again, when you're writing a sketch variety show, you're trying to write jokes for a person for how they would want to say it. And it, you know, like it reminds me of the story where like, you know, one at the show I was writing, it was like this show where the host would interview people like Kevin Bacon. So one day I was like writing jokes about Kevin Bacon for like 7 hours.
Okay.
And I was just like writing all these, I was looking up all these Kevin Bacon facts and dude's fascinating, by the way. He's like a fascinating motherfucker. But I, you know, wrote all these jokes and I was like, all right, I'm out. I gotta go home. And I got a spot tonight, so I'm gonna leave early. So I leave, get on the train, and before the car doors close, this hand sticks out, and this dude rushes in, and he has his hat real low, and he has his sunglasses on. And I was like, this idiot, like bumping into the train on like an idiot, like a fucking tourist. Meanwhile, I've only been there for like 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
And then I look closer at the dude and I'm like, I know this guy. Where have I seen this motherfucker before? And then I was like, oh shit, it's Kevin Bacon. I was like, whoa. Like, I was like, no way. So I never do this. Like, I've been around celebrities before. And not to say I'm not starstruck, because I am. I just don't like to bother people because I'm like, this dude must get bothered all the time and shit like that. So, you know, I don't want to, you know, show up and be like, whoa, what's up? I'm a big fan when I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, I just think, you know, I've seen like 2 things ran and shit.
It was the same day too that you had written.
Same day, literally.
That's
same
so
day.
weird.
Same day. So I walk up to him and I was like, hey man, I never do this, but are you who I think you are? Because I was trying to keep it discreet because, you know, we're in the car and shit. And he was just like, yeah. And I was just like, all right, bro, you're never going to believe this, but I've been writing jokes about you all day. And he's just like, what? And I was like, now I'm writing for this show. You're going to be a guest on it. And then he was like, okay, you're not going to believe this, but I'm texting about that show right now.
What?
Yeah. He's like, I'm literally responding to an email about my availability. And I'm saying yes. And then we just stared at each other for a second. And he was just like, this is weird. I was like, this is very weird. And I was just like, yo, what the fuck, man? And we just talked for a little bit. And he was asking me how the show was going. I told him, well, I asked him what he was doing in town. He told me he was visiting, like, I think he lives in New York, I think, actually. I should know this. I looked up all so many facts about it. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna go sit over there because I feel like I'm drawing attention to you. He's like, oh, it's all good. So then, I sat in the corner. He got off the stop, and I just was like, I should write jokes about Rihanna or something. It's like, we love me her.
Dude, that's so wild. That's a fucking great story. That's the story you should have used for the story section, man.
Oh,
I was sitting there like, oh, this is a perfect fucking story. Well, that actually,
I'll use another story.
Well, I had a couple other questions for you. I guess so. You were in New York for a while, balancing like stand up and writing and shit. Like what you're back in LA now. I guess I just jumped over that, but like, how was your New York experience, and like, what are you looking to do now back in LA?
I mean, New York was great. I learned so much about stand up. The comics there are so good, so it makes you elevate your game. I was writing more. Everyone there is so stand up focused, which is amazing. And like just the level of, you never know who you're going to see in New York, but everyone, even on your level or even above you, is just so good. And there's so many good comics. Everyone's a ripper.
Yeah.
And in LA, not to say that they're not rippers, because there's a lot of rippers out here, but there's more rippers in New York. And the motherfuckers don't play around. Like, you're on that stage, you gotta go for it. You're like there's some on both scenes, because like there's the club scene and the alt scene. And the alt scene had some people I was like, yo, you're fucking like that's crazy that you're an alt kid doing this shit. And what's his boy's name? Black dude, just fucking we're just every time I see him, he has to close the show every time because no one can follow that type of energy. But then even like the club people, like I had to follow Dave Attell once, and he pulled out a flute recorder, and he like played a flute recorder on stage playing hot cross buns, doing crowd work, intermingling with material as he's playing hot cross buns, and he's destroying because it's Dave Attell, he's a goat.
Yeah.
And that level of experience for a comic of my caliber and my experience and my credits, you don't get that much of it in LA.
Mm-hmm.
You can, depending on if you're well liked and they put you on certain shows, but or if you're past at certain clubs. But in New York, there's a lot more stage time. And a lot more people respect certain credits that I had. So I got a lot of stage time, and I got passed at certain clubs. And that was a really, really good experience for me, because like certain clubs there, one of the waiters explained to me, like, yo, like this is the NBA. You gotta come with it. You can't fuck around here. You gotta crush every set. And they weren't lying. There was like a level of every comic's murdering.
Yeah.
So you can't I would say in certain clubs, I was more nervous to perform there on a Tuesday than I was on my JFL showcase set in Montreal. Yeah, because there's just like more history and more gravitas to this scenario, because it's like, oh, this motherfucker is on stage. He's a murderer. He's one of the top dudes in the world right now. And you next.
Yeah.
And these motherfuckers paid money. These aren't industry people trying to see you. These motherfuckers are real people who came to go to this club because it's supposed to be the number one club in the country. And I would argue that it is. And there's no like, oh, well, he's better at it than me. They're like, nah, we pay this top dollar. You'll be just as good.
Yeah.
And
do you think like as a stand-up though, like that pressure can be detrimental at times, like in terms of developing new stuff or like taking chances, or because it can, like that type of pressure can lead somebody to only doing what they know works versus like taking chances and growing?
I think that pressure is needed. But I think if you want to grow, go to another room.
Yeah.
Go to a room where the pressure is not as high.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what comes with, you know, being passed at certain clubs is like, there is that pressure to perform, but, you know, after you show you can perform for a while, it is like the NBA. It's like, you know, when you first are a rookie, you're not going to try and do a windmill dunk on LeBron.
Yeah.
You're gonna first you make sure you can drop a certain amount of points, and then you do certain things. I mean, some people are obviously more ready than others, but it takes a moment to, like, you know, when you start getting to that level where you can kind of do all those crazy things and get, you know, to that level. And some people are way more ready than others, but it's not a race. It's, you know, it's all here. It's between you and yourself, not you and the other comics. And
well, the irony too is like those, whatever those A rooms were for you, then 5 years later, like that's your C room and you're like, like that's your workout space. And you know, you don't even think about it.
Like I had a spot that I remember before I got passed at this one club that I remember being like, oh, I gotta like bring it. And then I got passed that club and I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna bring my notes on stage to the spot.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this is where I gotta work out so that this is practice. This is my gym now for the big room, for the good.
Oh,
shit.
yeah.
And that's just kind of how you gotta approach it. It's like certain rooms, I have a spot tonight. And, you know, I just did 5 shows in Denver for Comedy Works South. And I was like, oh, I need to like start in LA. I'm good. I don't need to like do well in every show. I need to start taking more risks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where kind of my head's at right now. It's like, all right, I feel like I'm established enough in LA where I can get spots on regular shows and stuff like that. Now, when I'm on those shows is when I need to start taking the risks. Is when I need to start going for the growth. I saw George Lopez a couple weeks ago, and I got to meet him backstage with Andrew and my boy Benny, and he kind of just broke it down to us. He's just like, you know, if you're not taking risks, you're not really growing. And he said those word for word motherfuckers never make it. And I was like, yo, like, all right, I hear you. It's time to, you know.
That's great advice.
Fuck around. Yeah, he was so dope. So fucking funny. Well, George Lopez, after that set, and like I ain't gonna sit here like I'm some elitist because I didn't know. I knew he was good, but he might be one of the greatest comics of all time.
Really?
Yeah. Go watch George. If you ever have a chance to go watch George Lopez live, go.
Yeah, well, he was up here at Nate Jackson's club, which it's like, it's bringing a lot of different types of comedy to the Pacific Northwest, which is cool. And I saw, and I had seen his show a little bit on TV. It didn't seem like it was for me, but I'm gonna watch him now, man. Like, I'm surprised.
I'm telling you, George Lopez will shock you. He comedically speaking, this is only comedically speaking, he's the closest thing we have alive to Bill Cosby. Okay. He's like blue Bill Cosby. Just the level of freedom he's on stage, and his act out game is insane. And like, oh man, I was like blown away.
Dude, that's always so nice to find like someone that it's like a hidden gem that, I mean, he's been in the game for a long time, so he's got a fucking deep catalog too. So you can just go back on all of it.
Yeah, Americans. I think it's Americans Mexican is one of the dopest specials that came out in that era, but I just forgot.
Yeah,
you know? I just forgot.
So many comics, dude.
So many comics, but a lot of them are like you. When you see a guy like George and that level of crush in front of like how many people did that theater hold? Like 12,000 people, whatever the fuck. Yeah. And he's treating it like a club, and he's murdering, and he doesn't really move for the whole set. Like he's just is like in this one circle. He doesn't really move, but he's murdering. The act outs are insane. The subtleness, the themes are all there, and it's effortless with this motherfucker. And you're like, oh, I suck. I'm trash. Even as openers, I was like, yo, I have never heard of these guys. Well, I knew one of them, and he was great. But like just to see how they operated. And then they're like, oh shit, these guys were great. And then George goes out and like, oh, those guys suck too.
That's
like,
wild, dude.
There's a level of it that you're like, oh, okay. There's so many levels to this shit to become like a master at it.
Oh, for sure. All right, let's I asked you to bring on a story today. I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to ask you. Oh, this good reminder before we go into that. Just give me 1 second here.
Okay.
All right. So, anybody watching on YouTube, just a reminder, if you've enjoyed this episode so far, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and hit the notifications bell in the top right corner so you don't miss our content. If you have any questions or comments for myself or Opie, throw them in the comments section. Doing any of those things helps us with the algorithm. Let's go to story section.
It's story time. It's story time with Phantom. Yeah, it's story time. It's story time with Phantom and friends.
How is that not the intro to the whole podcast?
Oh, we got Travis Thompson for the intro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a local guy.
I didn't hear the intro. So, but that giant was crazy. Who did that?
That was Nate. God damn it. My producer's it's in the show notes now. So Nate, Allen, Depressica, and Tirey. Those are the three. And then my producer, Henry, actually made it. So I'll shoot it over to you.
That was great.
Yeah.
I just remember the name of the other writer for the Negroes. It was Ellen Timwell. She's awesome, by the way.
There we go.
My story. What was I going to say? What story was I going to say? So I'll tell you the story. There's this. When I moved to New York, when I first moved to New York, I had just started seeing this girl, and we were idiots and tried to keep making it work. Like she lived in LA and I would just move to New York. And I think out of fear of moving to a new city, I was like, maybe I should try to make this work. So I have something that keeps me tied to LA. So, I kept trying to date this girl and it was just hard on both of us. It was probably unfair to both of us. And there were just problems that were brewing. We'd argue every time we talk on the phone and it would just be dumb fights. And really what it was we both wanted to let go of each other, but we were both afraid to let go of each other. So she decided she was going to come out and visit. And there was all this pressure on this visit to come out. Even before, like 2 days before the visit, we had a huge fight over.
It's never a good sign prior to the trip.
Yeah, it was over really a dumb thing. I was right, but it doesn't matter. But it was over something really stupid. And she's like, I don't know, I'm not gonna come. And I was like, all right, cool. And she's like, all right, I'm gonna come. But then she was even like, before she came, I was already like, I don't know if I like this person anymore. And then she called me one night to be like, let's just not do this exclusive thing. And then when you come back to LA, we can try again. And I was like, let's just be friends. Let's not even
that's a weird look.
That. Let's just not even try this and let's just be friends. And I don't know how, but that call ended with us still being together. And she came out and said, it was really dumb. Yeah. I look back at that scenario and I was like, what were we thinking? She came to New York. It was awkward the first night, but it was good. second night, we were whatever. There was a little bit of tension. The third day, we got in an argument over the origin of pizza. This is the kind of arguments we were having. Like, I look back at it now and I'm like, we didn't like each other. We didn't really know each other that well. And then getting to know each other at a distance was making it even worse. So we rushed into something and then we're trying to make something work, which you got to do in dating. You know, I found once in a while you'll get one of those, you know, dumb scenarios. So we go back to my place. We hash out that argument, and then we go out to hang out with two of her college friends, and she gets really drunk, or that she might have been roofied. We don't know, but she got really fucked up. I know that. I just remember she got really fucked up. I wasn't drinking because I was trying to look good, because 2 days later I was supposed to be filming a Comedy Central set.
Okay.
So rather than running my set, I was hanging out with this girl like for 3 days. Like, I didn't know stand up to the lead up to my set.
Shit.
I was just hanging out with this girl because I was just like, I like her, so let's try it out, you know, and not really thinking about it. And honestly, I regret that because, you know, I look at my set and I'm like, it could have been better. I watch it all the time and being like, if I just tightened up a little bit, I really, really could have made that drink better. But, you know, lesson learned. So me and her, we're at this bar, and she's, you know, she's like kind of really happy because she's drunk, and we're talking about our plan for the next day, her last day, which is we're going to go to this place called Storm King, which is like an hour up north in New York, upstate New York, an hour north. And it's this cool spot where it's like these fields, and they have these like statues and shit, and these huge, gorgeous statues. It's a lot of white people go up there to do mushrooms.
Okay.
And she had invited, you know, not really consulting me, she had invited some more of her college friends. I was thinking this was going to be a day for me and her to hang out, but she invited some of her college friends, and she was like drunkenly telling me who they were. She was like, oh, there's Malcolm, he's Korean. There's Dennis, he's Vietnamese. And then there's Dennis's girlfriend, I think her name is Emily, she's white. And the girl who I was talking to, or the girl, my situation, she was Taiwanese. Okay. So, and I had rented a car. So I was like thinking of an old street joke, being like a Nigerian, a Taiwanese, a Korean, and a Vietnamese get into a Nissan Altima. So I was like, you know, that structure, that was my structure I was playing with. And I was like, what's this joke? What's this joke? I'm trying to figure out this joke. And she would already run off to the dance floor with her friend. So then she came back to me with her friend. Her friend was like, she's fucked up, she has to go home. I was like, all right, I'll take her home. So I take her home, I put her to bed, I go to sleep, I wake up, and I see her thrashing around my room. She's like thrashing all over my room. I'm like, what the fuck? I hop out of bed. She had thrown up on the floor. And I was like, what the fuck? I picked her up, took her to the bathroom, let her use the rest of the bathroom, cleaned it up. And then I just like babysat her until she went back to sleep. So this was like 5 a.m. I'm up now. And we're supposed to go to this place at 10. I wake up at like 7:30, take a shower, go pick up the car. I get back. She's like, hey. She was like, I was like, you know what you did last night? She was like, I had a feeling something bad happened, but don't worry. Like, I'm trying to, you know. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, fuck this. I'm done with this person.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to get through this day. You know, we're going to go to this place and then we're done. That's it. So her friend shows up. All her friends, the Malcolm, Dennis, and Dennis's girlfriend show up. And when we start driving over there, and I'm exhausted, I'm tired as fuck. I'm so sleepy. And we finally we're driving through, and this kid Malcolm, he's just kind of like asking me about all these rappers I know, and I was like, yeah, I know that guy, I knew that guy when he was in Baltimore, that kind of stuff, which happens a lot when you're a Black dude. You know, like people from different races will be like, oh, yo, you like J. Cole? And I'm like, oh, you mean one of the biggest rappers alive? Yes. I've never been asked if I like Tame Impala. You know, like no one ever asked me those stuff. And I like both of them, but it's just like, you know, they go straight to hip hop. But I get it. He's trying to connect with me. Mm-hmm. And then we talk anime, we talk all this shit. And I'm like, oh, this guy's cool. So he asked if he could play some music, and I let him connect to the Bluetooth. And then he's going through his Instagram, and he's talking to the girl that I'm with, and she's like, "Hey, you want to see this girl I'm dating?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." So he hands her his cell phone, and shows her the girl that he shows the girl I'm dating, the new girl he's messing with, the Instagram. And she's looking at the Instagram. He's like, she's really cute. He's like, yeah, nigga, that's my type. And I'm like, what? I'm like, wait, what just happened? And at first I was like, maybe I misheard him because there's a rap music playing right now.
Yeah.
Like maybe, and I'm really fucking tired. I shouldn't be driving. That's how tired I am. And so I'm driving an hour and 30 minutes, and I'm just like, did I just mishear this dude? And then I'm like, I probably misheard this dude because there's no way he would just be doing that. And so
wait, he's Vietnamese?
He's Korean.
Okay.
So I'm driving and I'm like, all right, whatever, maybe I misheard. And then he keeps saying it with every rap song that plays. He's like, nigga this, nigga that, nigga. And I'm just like, yo, what the fuck? And I'm looking over at my girl, because she still is this person. I don't mean this in any sort of way, but she's like a very woke person, hyper woke, hypersensitive. Like some of the arguments we got into, because I'm a comic and I fuck around, she'd be like, you can't say that. That's fucked up. Yeah. That's toxic. That's this, that, and the third. And I'm like, yo, I'm fucking around. I'm not like serious. Yeah. I'm being an idiot. I'm being, but she was hypersensitive to that shit. So I was kind of like, oh, wait. So you're going to be hypersensitive to me when I don't even really say stuff that's fucked up? And then you're going to let your boy just say nigga like that shit? So I was heated. But I was like in my brain, I'm like, what the fuck? But I'm like, this is our last night. I want to see Storm King. I'm going to talk to this dude after the trip. And we go to Storm King. I'm like quiet the whole time we're there. We're there for like 3 hours. I was quiet the whole fucking time. Just pissed, seething. Just fucking seething. The drive back, they're like, oh, can we stop to get some food? And she was like, oh, we're actually gonna get dinner. And then the Malcolm kid was like, oh, can I connect to the aux cord? And I was like, actually, I want to play my music. And I played nothing but French rock because I knew they wouldn't say nigga. Yeah. I was just like, he's not going to be able to say what I'm in the car. So I'm practicing what I'm going to say, on the entire drive back. I'm like, oh, I'm going to tell him this, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to tear into her and be like, and you the one saying all this shit. You was getting mad at me saying I was this and that. Well, you the whole time got friends who just say nigga all the way. I was like, I am vilified. I got this. So he put up to my spot. Dylan and his girlfriend get out, and I'm like, hey, Malcolm, you want to hold back? I want to talk to you real quick. So like I turn back in my seat. I'm like all cool and shit. I'm like, hey, bro, I know who you think you are, or what you think you can do, but you really shouldn't be saying nigga around Black dudes when you don't really know them Black dudes. And then he looked at me and he was just like, okay, well, I feel like when it comes to the word nigga, and I was like, I'm gonna stop you right there. Stop saying nigga. And he's just like, why can't I say nigga? And I'm like, because you're not Black. And he goes, I am Black. I was like, no, you're not. and then the girl I was dating was like, no, he is Black. He's part Black. And I look at her and I look at him, and then I kind of can see it. Like, I see old boy shape up is tight. I see like he's a little tanner now since we've been in the sun all day. And I'm like, oh shit, he is part black. And I turned to her and I'm like, but you told me he was Korean. She said, no, I said his grandma was Korean. She didn't say that. She was drunk out of her mind.
Oh yeah.
He said he was Korean. But I could see in her mind how she thinks. She was like, oh, I said his grandma was Korean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was never any mention about him being black. So I look back at him and I look back at her and I was like, hey, my nigga, she told me you were Korean.
The whole day it was just ruined for you too. Oh, dude, that's a great fucking story.
He was like, oh, bro, don't worry about it, dog. It happens to me all the time. And I was just like, yeah, because you look like Asian. Like, I ain't gonna, like, I'm not trying to be racist, but like, whole time. I mean, also in the context of she told me you was Korean. So I thought, like, oh, this is just a Korean dude who likes to dress black and shit. You know, I ain't gonna question it. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's it. So then I look over at, he gets out the car, we dap up, he gets out the car, she looks at me and she's like, I can't believe you.
Oh man.
All this shit. And I was just like, you know, and one of the arguments that we did have, and I do agree with her, is in arguments, sometimes I steamroll people. And that's something I have been working on since that situation and I still work on. And when I said she told me you were Korean to him, from her POV, even though I remember clearly her being like, he's Korean and Dylan's Vietnamese, I remember like it must have looked like I just threw her under the bus.
Yeah.
And I guess I did, but it's also like that's what happened. Like she did say that. So in front of her friend, it looked like she was just like not even acknowledging his black side. So I understand her perspective in that scenario, but at the same time, I was kind of like, dog, like this was just a shock to my, I went from, I got this to, oh my God, I was leaning back in the seat the way I was talking to this motherfucker. And, you know, she got out of the car. She wouldn't return my calls. She's like, fuck you. And then I drove back to the rental car spot. I get out of the car and the rental car dude was just like, yo, you look like shit. What the fuck happened? Like, I was just like, ugh. And he's like, are you okay? And I was like, I told him the whole story I just told you.
Yeah.
And then he asked me to look at my phone. He's like, let's see this guy. And I found his Instagram and I showed him and he was like, man, this nigga's whatever you say he is. And then I looked at the guy and I was like, I couldn't tell what race he was. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. I don't care. I'm going home. I'm going home. And then the next day, earlier that before we even went to Storm King, when I went to go pick up the car, or when we were about to go into the car, I almost stepped in dog shit. And the girl I was dating was like, oh, you almost stepped in dog shit. And I was like, I ain't gonna step in dog shit. What the fuck do you think was wrong with me? You think I would step in dog shit? What the fuck? And that night she came over, she was like, obviously we're not gonna stay together. And I was like, well, yeah, like that's over. And I apologized to her and I said, you know, I gotta fix some shit about myself and, you know, blah, 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 blah. I look back at that, I think that whole scenario wasn't 100% fair on me either. Mm-hmm. I think there was a lot of shit that went down there. She leaves. I call like 4 of my friends just telling them the story. They're like, yo, that's insane. And then the next morning, I was on my way to work. I step off my stoop. I stepped right in dog shit. I was like, wow, what a fucking universal metaphor. So the next day was my Comedy Central thing. The set was whatever. I get off stage and all I could think of was like, that dude, I thought he was Korean. I just thought this. I just was haunted by that for like a month.
That's so funny.
Every person who was like kind of light skinned or racially ambiguous, I was like, hey, are you black? I would just ask them that out of fear. Because I just was like, I don't want to make the same mistake that I did in that scenario with that dude. And I felt so bad to that guy because that must have happened to him a billion times from other black dudes. When I feel like what he was trying to do was signal to me that he was a black dude. And I just didn't pick up on that because I was tired.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't really look at him. Like, I didn't take a really good look at him until that moment that I was like, oh, I do see it. I see it now. But I swear to you, it had been a couple cloudy weeks in New York, so he was looking more beige than normal. But I swear to you, dog, I swear to you, like, you go through his photos and you're like, yo, like, some days he looks Korean, some days he looks black. It's just, it is what it is. But God bless that dude. He was very understanding, and you know, I'm sure he gets that shit all the time, undeservedly so. So
that was fucking good story, man. Thanks for sharing.
All good, man.
Before you hop off, is there anything you want to plug? Anything like people listening or watching can support you, like a YouTube channel, Instagram, any social media stuff?
I would say go to my Instagram, it's Swanky Opey. I won't be using it that much because I'm still developing my own show. Mm-hmm. God willing, we get to make that shit. So keep an eye on my Instagram. You'll find out if I get to make that shit or not.
Sounds good. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Thank y'all, man. This was dope, man. Appreciate you, Adam.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to rate and review us. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the notifications bell so you don't miss our upcoming content. And as always, follow us on Instagram at FNFpod. We're going to leave you with Jaga.
I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. My wave pool, my wave pool. Welcome to 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 my wave pool.